Last March, I was right here in Gaston Hall attending the Own It Summit. After the end of the first panel, I decided I wanted to go outside and call my mom to talk to her about all the super awesome feminist women who are doing the kind of thing I wanted to be doing 10, 20, 30 years from now. Women who were actively working to create a space for themselves and for future women like myself. I was so excited to talk to her until I heard her voice. I knew that tone of voice. Mama, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong, Habibti, my love, nothing's wrong. Mama, you're crying, what's wrong? I'm just sad about things back home. Don't worry about me though. Nothing's wrong, I'm okay. Focus on your studies, you're a senior. Everything's gonna be okay. I knew not to take my mom's words at face value. I knew that tone of voice. It was the tone of voice that comes from the gut-wrenching pain of losing a loved one. I decided to call my little sister. Fatma. I spoke to Mama. I heard her voice. Who is it? Who died this time? It was Muhammad Ulad Khali, our maternal cousin. This was the third cousin we lose in the span of 3 months. I can't even keep count how many family members we've lost over the past 2 years. I was born in Benghazi, Libya. Most of my family lived there until they were displaced in 2014 because of a civil war that no one wanted. Starting October 15th, 2015, we've been continuously losing family members and loved ones to a civil war that no one wanted. I still feel the pain of each loss. I still feel it right here. But more than the pain, I feel guilt. You see, there's a survivor's guilt that comes during times of war, and I feel it exponentially. How is it my family are trying to live escaping the horrors of war while I'm at Georgetown? What did I do to deserve this level of privilege? To make things worse, I didn't have the language to speak about this type of guilt to my friends, which only isolated me more. I felt guilty for the smiles at a cracked joke. I felt guilty for the stress of midterms because my cousins hadn't even gone to school for the past couple of years. And I couldn't talk about this to my friends because we've been taught to value problem solving over active empathy. So every time I would talk to someone about this, they'd try to come up with some solution, which was never really a solution, only isolating me more. I still remember one specific instance of this. I was talking to one of my best friends, whom I love dearly, about this. And she said, maybe I should consider learning to forgive. She started reading Desmond Tutu quotes to me, which only infuriated me more. How dare you? How dare you ask me to forgive when my cousins were taken away from their mothers? How dare you ask me to forgive when my family home was burned to a crisp? How dare you ask me to forgive when I still hear the crack in my aunt's voice every time her son's name is mentioned? She took a moment and then responded, but how will you heal? How will your country heal? You see, by that point, I'd perfected the art of, I'm fine. Every time someone would ask me about this, don't worry about me, I'm fine, don't worry. And the little smile to assure all my friends that everything was okay and that they didn't need to feel guilty for not being around me all the time after all the losses. I'm fine, it's all good, don't worry about it. But every time I did that, raging forest fires of anger started inside of me, which left no space for healing. Was it even possible to heal after this much loss? I started looking for ways of healing that didn't require forgiveness. Forgiveness requires someone ask for forgiveness. Forgiveness requires some form of moral justification or explanation of these people's actions, and I couldn't bring myself to do so. While talking about this to one of my professors, she mentioned a group called the YIHR, the Youth Initiative for Human Rights in the former Yugoslavia. They're a group of young activists who create art installations like this one across the different cities in the former Yugoslavia. This art installation was in Pristina in Kosovo. It has in it a wall inscribed the names of 1,819 missing persons since the last war in Kosovo. And in front of the wall, they put a chair to remind people all these names. For all these names, there is still a chair in someone's dining table. Their families are still waiting for them to come home for dinner. What was controversial about this piece of art, though, was that the names of the victims were not just those from Kosovo. There were Croats and Bosniaks and Serbs. The pain transcended the borders that were created by the war. That reminded me of a scene that I had seen at a Libyan Aza. A Libyan Aza is a social occasion after someone dies. All family, friends, and loved ones come to give condolences to the family of the person who had died. I was at one Aza when I saw a scene that no amount of words can describe. Two mothers whose sons had fought on opposite sides of the war, hugging each other and crying. Each wail barely a drop in the ocean of their grief. I was so surprised by the scene, I asked my cousins about it. And they said this wasn't a rare sight. They said these mothers understand each other in a way no politician ever will. Both mothers wake up every morning, and for a brief second, everything's okay, until they remember. And when they remember, it's like a wave hitting them in the face again and again and again every moment, reminding them of the moment they found out that their son was no longer alive. These mothers, when they see each other, they don't see politics. They see the pain. They practice empathy. These mothers understand each other in a way no politician ever will, or else why would they keep sending our sons to fight each other? In trying to understand this, I did the only thing I know how to do when I'm overwhelmed by emotion. I wrote a spoken word poem. Sarah Kay, the poet, says spoken word poetry is poetry that demands to be heard or witnessed. One of my professors in undergrad taught me that spoken word poetry is 3 minutes of me on a stage uninterrupted so I can interrupt the status quo. To me, spoken word poetry is feelings that refuse to sit on paper or a screen. They want to scream, and they use my vocal cords as a tool to do so. And so I wrote this poem. We have a proverb in my country. جي في المال وما تجيش في العيال. Let the curse come to my money and not my children. But the curse has taken both. The curse has turned my home into a graveyard full of names of people I once recognized, filled with the stench of death almost distracting me from the smoky gray of all the tombstones with father, daughter, son, beloved, beloved, beloved. That word brings about the shrieks of all the mothers after losing their sons. That word brings about the grief of knowing that my brother isn't coming home. My brother isn't going to tell me I'm safe. My brother, my beloved. Mahmoud Darwish, the Palestinian poet, says, "My killer and I lie in the same grave in war. This war has turned my city into a graveyard. And in the graveyard, there is no winner, for the killer and the killed lie in the same grave." This poem was a culmination of 2 years of emotions. This poem was the beginning of my healing process. It taught me that in the graveyard, there are no winners. In the graveyard, there is only pain. And pain knows no ideology, no nation or ethnicity or religion. Pain affects us all. In reflecting about this poem and everything that I've been through in the past couple of years, I noticed something. I noticed that people try to put a hierarchy on pain. We try to say, my pain is tougher than theirs. My pain, it's harder. But in the process of doing so, we don't realize that we're isolating them from empathizing with us, and we're stopping ourselves from empathizing with them. We try to tie a moral character to pain. And in the process, we don't acknowledge the pain of those that we disagree with. Empathy, on the other hand, empathy allows us to see the pain of those that we disagree with. To go a step further, empathy allows us to see the humanity of those that hurt us. I believe empathy can be learned. Specifically, empathy can be learned through art. And I'm not talking about the really expensive art that no one really understands that goes from one millionaire's house to another millionaire's house. I'm talking about the art that disrupts the daily. I'm talking about the art that disrupts the news bites that we've become desensitized to. I'm talking about the Roses of Sarajevo campaign, which was done in a way to draw a red rose in every place that someone was killed in Sarajevo in 1995. I'm talking about Bear Story, which tells the story of los desaparecidos in Chile in the span of 9 minutes. I'm even talking about Hamilton, which has led us all to reconsider how we view our history and how we interact with our society today. Art is a powerful disruptor. My personal medium of art is poetry. For the past 2 years, I've been performing poetry to diverse audiences, and it never ceases to amaze me how a poem so personal to me can deeply affect someone who was born and raised in Venezuela or Colombia or Yemen or Syria, or even in the safety of the United States. And I think that's because poetry, spoken word poetry, is vulnerable. When I perform a poem, it's 3 minutes of me on a stage sharing my heart to a group of people I've never met before. But it's that vulnerability that allows them to approach me after the end of the poem and say, I felt that. You see, I have this kind of similar experience because of this and this. often opening up a discussion that wouldn't have happened otherwise. Poetry uses my tongue as a paintbrush to accentuate the colors of my words in a performance that's the portrait in the end. And that portrait opens up a key to finding empathy. Now, while there are still raging forest fires inside of me from all the pain and all the loss, I can confidently say that they're slowly but surely calming down from the rain brought by empathy. Empathy is the key to healing a divided society, both personally and societally. And art is the key to that empathy. Thank you.